Well, I was 15 when Rabbi Weiner and Anita, his wife, and their two boys, their little boys, Danny and David, came to town. Um, he was an amazing force. That he and Anita, the two of them, which the likes of which we had never really seen in Hamilton before, and I don't think could have imagined that we would have ever seen in Hamilton, as the rabbi of Beth
I
Jacob
remember
Synagogue.
reading James Baldwin, just having an exciting intellectual experience, which was not something I was used to. Certainly, we studied in high school, but this was a whole new thing to be treated as an adult. It was very exciting, it was having an intellectual life, which was not something I had experienced before from adults in my life.
At a certain point, I think, after being thrilled that I was actually spending time at the shul, my parents maybe got a little bit worried that I was spending too much time at the shul. And they actually, I remember a conversation where they said, what's going on there? He's like the Pied Piper. He's got you all hanging around 24/7. But it was sort of like that. He glommed onto us and we glommed onto him and Anita.
Like life-changing people, like committed to life, to helping society. Anyways, that's why the 3 years was so important and impressive, and to us impressionable kids, because we just never saw that before. This was the big show. This was the big league, in the sense of bigger thinking, world vision thinking, commitment.
And Gene was very involved in the civil rights movement, personally. It just was something that I guess spoke to him. And I think there was the Jewish Theological Seminary had quite an active group who were involved in civil rights issues. And there was a key march in Selma, Alabama, that led by Martin Luther King. And many clergy from all over went, and they were all marching at the front right behind Martin Luther King. And Gene went as part of the contingent from the Jewish Theological Seminary. We all gathered at their home at Amelia to watch on TV with Anita and the boys, and that was unbelievably thrilling. I mean, that's, was like a moment that I'll never forget. And the next Rosh Hashanah after this, Gene did something which blew absolutely everybody away. He had delivered a sermon, and I think he had connected it into issues around civil rights and human rights. And then at a certain point, he asked the entire congregation to stand, join hands, and sing "We Shall Overcome." And there was this stunned silence in the congregation. And of course, all the teenagers leapt to their feet. And slowly other people did too, and sang. But there was an enormous amount of head scratching going on. I think people couldn't understand where this came from, what it was, and what they were doing there. But it was a really interesting moment.
The old guard liked to do things their way. They had their setup. And when Rabbi Weiner came in, he was fresh. He was young, energetic. And it was the youth's turn to rise up in the shul and take their place. And he was trying to frame our minds as to what was important.
He never gave you answers. What he did was open things up, and that was his study groups in particular. And by opening things up, he forced you to come to your own conclusions. And they were never wrong. They were just a perspective, and it was a wonderful perspective, which I think is partly how we got to the point of going on that trip to Israel, because it was an exploration. It was an opportunity that I would never have thought of in my life. My parents, in those days, it just wasn't an option.
We went on the SS Israel, which was a converted freighter. On the front of the ship, I mean, it still had freight. There were fire engines that were going to Israel. We were in the kids. We were on the lowest floor of the or whatever you call them on a ship. We were 2 weeks on the ship. It was marvelous, absolutely marvelous. We had shacharit services every morning. There was a chapel on the ship, and we had mincha mariv every afternoon. We mainly lied around in the sun and had fun, but we also had study. We were learning different things. We'd meet in the library of the ship in the afternoons and study whatever we were studying. It was magical.
Anita Weiner was the matriarch of the family, to say the least. On the trip to Israel, it's like she was the major guide. He led all of us, obviously, but she knew a great deal about all the places we went. She knew how to take care of us, because I think there were 50 people who hadn't really been away from home very much. And I don't mean in a motherly way, although she did some of that too. It just was a very special time, and she had a great deal to do with it.
Of course, another huge highlight of the trip was meeting Ben Gurion, which probably none of us really understood the significance of. I know I did not really truly understand the significance. But there we were, all 57 of us.
One of the things I think Jean brought to me and my peers, my fellow Beth Jacob teenagers, that the ones of us who actually really strongly connected to him, was some sense of politics greater than our own little world, and opened our eyes to the fact that there was a bigger world out there, and that we had to take political issues seriously, because even if on the surface they didn't seem to affect us, like the civil rights movement in the South of the United States, at some level they affected all of us. And that is something that, I took from that moment. And it was a really small moment. It was like, I was 15, 16, 17, and then they were gone. They were only with us for 3 and a bit years. And it was pretty fabulous. We were very lucky kids.